everybody, this is Perch, and have a kind of intriguing question to go through. I think this is, an interesting question and one to talk about. I'm struck by, I'm watching the news kind of casually. I'm doing a bunch of, I'm actually doing some programming for a change, and the news is kind of in on the background. And they start talking about beer, so I immediately perk up and take notice. But the story is this long, convoluted. Basically, this so the company CCU, which is a Latin American beverage beer company, is saying that they're very concerned because they're seeing signs of demand going down for their premium beer. That their more expensive beer is going down. They're seeing less sales. It's worrisome. Is this cause of inflation? I don't know. They speculated about that for a while. It must be. But then the part that caught me was they're like, our cheaper type beer, our other beer, and then our competitors' beer, like, Bud Light and Coors and Corona and all that, that seems to be selling fine. In fact, if anything, the sales have increased a little bit. But our premium beer, our craft beer, our more high price beer is going. The demand is going down, and they're like, why? How could this be? Do you think this is inflation? Are people just cutting back on drinking? I'm surprised by this. And it's like, well, but they're drinking a cheaper beer, just not the overpriced expensive beer. I can't. How could we possibly solve this mystery? And they just go on and on for like 4 minutes. They're like, Jesus, people. It's hey, maybe if there's inflation and you've got your expensive ass, private label beer that the yuppies buy, maybe not. I guess the millennials, not the yuppies anymore. That's showing my age right there. But anyway, it's just I find this stuff baffling. Like the answer is right in front of you. It's like, hey, when times are a little tough, people buy cheaper beer. Hey, maybe a lot of the millennials and the hipsters who liked your specialty expensive craft beer don't have the money for it, or they moved on to whiskey, or who knows. But anyway, I see this leader of this company just baffled. How could this be? I'm very confused. Like, you should not be the leader of that company. Anyway, sorry for that diversion, but it's like, come on, common sense, people. It's not that difficult. Anyway, here's a mail from a viewer. Do kids like kids? Okay, let's see what we got. It says, hey, Perch, I'm asking you this both as a retailer and someone who's been into comics since being a kid and has kids. Do you feel kids actually like kid characters? This has always been kind of industry knowledge throughout entertainment that the way to win over kids, new kids, is kid characters. But looking back on my own life, I'm open to being in the minority. I never had an interest in kid characters much at all. I like things like Scooby-Doo, and even as a kid, I distinctly remember hating the area of baby fixation. And when I say kids, I mean like 14 or younger. No, my experience is no. Kids typically don't like kid characters. They typically like, slightly older. So like my daughters, my older daughter, she's 11. She wants to see things with adults, or at least like 17, 18. That's the characters that she's going to gravitate to. Kid characters in fiction, she has no time for. It's like, and to the point where it's kind of sad for me, because I'm like, hey, let's watch like The Goonies. It's a fun movie from when I was a kid, The Goonies. And my daughter's like, kids being wacky. There's a kind of a built-in expectation that the kids are going to do silly, crazy things. So they could be in the mood for some of this, but generally, no. And in comics, not at all. No interest. Now, my younger daughter, she does like more kid characters. I think she'll go for the movies that are going to have kids in them, Spy Kids, where there's kids. I think she appreciates that and everything else. There's this just god awful princess movie of some two girls, young girls that are going to teach a princess how to be a princess. God, it's thoroughly terrible. But anyway, she liked that quite a bit. But when she picks up comics or books, she typically wants older characters. So the exception is kind of like the Babysitter Club, that kind of stuff. But generally, it's animals, it's robots, it's superheroes. And I guess the big thing is that they don't look at it like, I need to read kids or I need to read adults. To them, if they can pick it up and it's engaging and entertaining, that's the barrier. As long as it's entertaining, it doesn't matter really who's in that book. And, it could be anybody. And they're totally fine with it. In fact, the more you kind of pander, the more you're like, hey, it's kids for kids. That's like, a garlic to a vampire. They like anytime, and I'll watch them when they do the school book fairs and things like that, and I take them in there, and every book that's labeled, by kids for kids, kids will love this. That's like, nope. And both kids and my kids and other kids, if you pander to them in that way, they do not want to be told. And if they're told this has got kids in it, this has got kids, then it's like, no, they will absolutely walk away. I think the secret to unlocking kids stuff in comics is just make it entertaining. It's got to have a lot of action. It's got to have a lot of, and when I say action, I don't necessarily mean superheroes beating up things. Try this experiment, by the way, and you could do it without being weird or anything else like that. Like, um, I told this to an adult man. I'm like, you should go check out Babysitter Club and Dog Man. Go to the kids section of like Target and just thumb through those books. And because it basically was trying to get a job doing a YA graphic novel. I'm like, you should go check those out. Look at some of the stuff that's doing really, really well. It's like, no, I can't. I'm not going to go into one of those stores and pick up one of those books. People will think I'm a pedophile. Like, no, they're not going to think of it. No, don't be weird about it. Don't just thumb through it like you're mildly curious. Don't look weird. You'll be fine. And it's the same kind of. Every now and then I watch a guy. Now this one I think may be more controversial to some of you, but I'm curious what you think of the comments. So the idea of like, do you hold your girlfriend or your wife's purse? If she hands it to you, are you going to hold it? So I'll admit I don't like it. I don't want to hold it. It feels weird holding it. I don't know why. It's that giant ass strap. If it was just relatively small with handles, I could probably hold on to that like a bag and it's not a big deal. But when it has like the super long strap and everything else, then suddenly it's like it gets I don't know, it blows it up for me. I can't I can't do it. However, that said, if my wife's going like to the changing room or for whatever reason wants to go in the restroom or something like that, and we're at a mall or someplace like, and she's like, "Can you hold this while I go in there?" I'm gonna hold it. I've watched guys like drop it on the floor. They're like, nope, and they'll just like dump it on the floor and like the door that the floor that everybody's walking on that's dirty and all that stuff. I don't know. I come on, don't be a douche, but but I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable to hold it. It's just not something that I carry around. I know that's silly, but there you go. Anyway, I don't know how did I get here? Very, very, very peculiar. Anyway, I guess the point is don't look at some of these books that are written for kids, and I think Babysitter Club. My younger daughter is super into that series, and she's also into Cells at Work, which is a manga. And if you look at the two of them, there's a striking similarity between the two in terms of action, how the story carries itself along. I guess I'd say that more than action. Because when you think of action, you think of superheroes punching each other or do some, have a fight or some kind of conflict. But a better way to put it is how the story carries itself forward. And a lot of the commonality between a lot of manga, between Babysitter Club, between Dogman, radically different books for radically different audiences. But the common thread is the story has direction and purpose. And if you compare it to, just your average issue of a Marvel comic these days, there's a lot of decompression in the story of, hey, this character's having a problem. This character's going to meet somebody for lunch. This character's going to talk on their cell phone for a while. Hey, they're trying to navigate their boss and everything else. There's a mode of storytelling that is just it's hard to get into, and it's dull. It's just very, very dull, and it's you can't get into it. And it's if you look at the Babysitter Club, which is designed for younger girls, and you look at something like Dark Knight Returns, sounds ridiculous. If you look at the two, you'll notice that the storytelling has purpose, that the stories feel like the pages feel like they're moving one direction after another. And there's a secret in there, and I think if you're going to appeal to kids, you have to have, not that kids should be reading Dark Knight Returns and anything like that, but the story needs to have momentum, forward momentum, and that's going to work a lot more than it's introducing a kid character. And it's even worse when the writer clearly has no idea of how to write kids, which is a lot of the time. A lot of the kids, when you write a kid's story, it's like the writer feels like they have to have the kids constantly validating and apologizing to each other. I go back and it's a punching bag, and I don't mean to do it, but if you look at Vita and Danny's comics, because Vita was doing New Mutants and Danny was Laura was doing Champions. In both books, there's this just constant overuse of the characters needing to validate each other. You're great. No, you're great. I insulted your feelings. I apologize for that. Well, I shouldn't have taken it so seriously. I apologize too. Hey, we've learned more about each other. That's flat unreadable for kids. They don't do it. I showed my daughter Champions, the Danny Lore comic, and she was enamored by the art because the characters all look kind of plasticky and big eyes and everything else, and it in the words of my daughter, looked very kawaii and looked like a stuffy. I think that was her description of the art in Champions, is the characters looked like stuffies, and that was appealing for some reason. And the trying to read the plot, it was just they never caught. Nope, just couldn't even begin to start having the conversation about the book. There's no interest whatsoever, and there's just no forward drive to the story. So that's why. And kids are very, very highly sensitive to, like I said, feel like they're being pandered to, feel like it's you need to read this because you're a kid and kids read this, and that they just that's the fastest way to drive the kid audience away, and that's what's happening. Anyway, thank you very much for the question. I apologize for the the random side quests during the course of this video, but thanks for listening.